Okay, woman, I gotta ask the question I always love to ask because it just hits me in the heart in the best possible way. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe we're having this conversation?
I can't. I also it's hard to even like describe the joy that I feel right now. Thinking back to the person I was, when I came to you in desperation, and just to be here and to know that this is my episode and I get to give back to the women who are listening because I was such an avid listener of the podcast and so grateful to the women who gave their stories before me because I really clutched them kind of like a lifeline. And to be here and to be able to give that back means a lot to me.
Yeah, I'm just so delighted that you're here. I mean, it is humbling for me as the person that's putting out these conversations, like to watch so many of you do that. And to go from being a listener to a guest is like cuckoo birds. It's so good. It's so good. So, why don't we start off with how did you find yourself on this journey and how did we meet?
Mm-hmm. So we met because, and I can give background of like, starting the journey and how that all came to be. But we met because I was really struggling to get pregnant. I had already had a miscarriage and it had probably been a year and a half and it, hadn't gotten pregnant again. And I started reaching out to the women in my life and telling people that I was struggling with fertility. And that, I think at the time that felt brave because not a lot of women will share that they're struggling. Thankfully, I didn't have a ton of shame. No shame on women, that feel whatever they feel, but I just was looking for resources. And a good friend of mine said that her cousin had gone through fertility struggles and she had done your coaching program. So I actually found it through a referral of the coaching program rather than finding your podcast first. So once I heard about you and that it had been successful for her, that was when I started listening to the podcast and kind of signed up immediately because I think it was like one episode of hearing your voice and positivity. And I was like, okay, this is for me. This is what I need.
Wow, that's incredible. Like, it's so funny because when I started this podcast, I'm like, I don't know who's going to be listening, right? Like, who is going to listen to a former prosecutor talk about this topic? But it never ceases to amaze me how, like, the reach and the impact is crazy. So, okay. Well, I would love it, like, because here's the thing. That is a wonderful recitation of what happened, but like what made you curious about this mindset piece? Because if you had had a miscarriage and you were struggling to conceive, what was it within you that made you want to look at this mindset piece? Because most people wouldn't, Caroline. Like most people just wouldn't. They want to go to a doctor, which is great. Like it's wonderful. But most people wouldn't look at that step. I'm super curious about what made you interested in that piece.
Mm-hmm. I think it was twofold. One of feeling like I was at what I thought at the time was my rock bottom and was just feeling so desperate for help. And so desperate for a different kind of help. I had gone to a fertility clinic probably like 8 months after the miscarriage when nothing else had happened. And the fertility clinic had told me, I wrote my numbers down because that was always helpful for me. But the fertility clinic, they ran my numbers. My AMH was 0.07, which is so incredibly low, which meant low ovarian reserve right off the bat. My FSH was 36.9 and my TSH was 4.75. So the fertility doctor immediately diagnosed me with low ovarian reserve and said that I was perimenopausal. And I was 33 at the time. And it just felt like this diagnosis was the end of my world. And she said, you will never get pregnant on your own. And I looked at her and was like, but I have been pregnant. I've had a miscarriage. And she said, well, that was a miracle. That'll never happen again. And it was just devastating to me because it was such a like foregone conclusion in her mind that this would never happen. And I believed it because I'd been taught forever that you believe the white coats and doctors know best and all of those things. And I know there are good doctors out there. I'm now suspicious of fertility doctors because that's a business. But I also, it destroyed me. And yet there was also this voice inside me that was saying, I've been pregnant. My body can do this. I don't really believe this diagnosis. It doesn't feel like it fits me. And so that was when I did start reaching out to people and kind of seeing what they had been through. Had anybody been given a diagnosis like this? What had people found? And then that was when, through my friend, I had kind of listened to you, and it was your kind of, you saying mindset is such a piece and there's more that you can do and believing in yourself. It really struck me because I'm a psychotherapist. I give therapy for a living. So of course I believe that there's a mind-body connection. I work with it every day of my life with my clients. But I think what I realized I needed was kind of to be, I guess, humbled in a way of like, I needed someone to kind of like come pull me out of the mud. And that was what it seemed like you did for people, is like, let me come pull you out of the mud of the negativity that you've been facing and let me help you get to a better place. And that just seemed like exactly what I needed.
That's incredible, Caroline, because your self-awareness and the willingness to say, okay, somebody in authority with a white coat on is telling me that this is never going to happen for me, but I can hear my own wisdom saying that doesn't fit. Do you realize what it took for you to even go in that direction? Like most people hear that shit and tap out, I'm done, right? Like you, and I just love this about you because in that clutch moment, you had a choice. You could either claim your own authority, even if it made no fucking sense based on those numbers, right? 0.07 AMH. What was your FSH? 36 or whatever?
36.9.
36.9, girl. Like you could have easily and the word perimenopausal will send an entire room scurrying, right? But there was something in you that said no. Like, what was it like trusting that at the time? I mean, I know we're heading in a direction and I know we're going to talk about the good shit that happened, but like, what was it like at that time to feel that conflict and say, no, I'm going to choose me?
Well, that voice was small. I'm not going to lie. I wish I could say that was the predominant voice in my head. It wasn't. That voice was small. And it helped that he was my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, but it helped that my boyfriend listened to that as well and lifted that up in me, and said, look, even though the fertility doctor is saying you don't have time, what if you took time to listen to that voice? Like, I'm okay waiting. We're okay waiting, and that gave me a lot of strength. I think being on the same page as he was and him trusting that, again, small voice in me that was saying, I can do this. I think also with your program, it's not a ton of time, it's a couple months. And I think that was another gift to give myself was like, well, why not try this first? Why not try something first? Because so much power to women going the medical route. I'm all about it. I always knew that could be an option for us eventually, hopefully. But it also felt like if there's another way that feels better to me, why not try that first? And so that was where it was like, okay, I'm going to give the coaching a try. I'm going to give the mindset work a try. And again, like knowing that there's a mind-body connection that I was clearly struggling with because of the diagnosis, because of the grief of the miscarriage, because it was, quote, taking long in my mind. Yeah, I mean, it was small, but it was there, and it was giving myself time to listen to that voice.
Wow. Does your man have like 75 brothers? Like, I'm sure there are women listening to this that are like, where do I get one like that?
I did get lucky. He's a really good one. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because that's small. Like, I think that's where the magic really happens. It's in that small knowing, because it's like who you become in the process of listening to that small knowing is massive. It's huge. Like, I don't know, like, I know that you get how important this is, but I think you probably won't fully understand what you've done till much later. Like, it's very shocking, like, when you really look at how far you've come. I mean, I had the good fortune of being able to watch, as an observer. But at some point, we'll have another conversation where we talk about how, like, blown away you are about who you've become. But before we get to any of that, like, so you make this decision to do this coaching. Like, were you afraid?
Yeah, I was afraid because, again, I'm a therapist and I know what it means to go there. And what I'm talking about is that emotional excavation that this work requires. And for me, it was so much mom work. My mom died right before I started the coaching program. And she and I had a really complicated relationship. She died of alcoholism. We were cut off in the last couple of years of her life because of the alcoholism. But I loved her fiercely, and it was so complicated. And her death was so wrapped up in what I was perceiving as the death in me. And that's how bad my mindset was at the time, right? I mean, our minds do crazy things to us, but for me, it was like I was death. She died. The first miscarriage happened. I wasn't able to create life. That was the kind of mindset cycle I was in, was just death. I was living in death. And I was afraid of the program because I knew doing it was going to have to be confronting all of this mom wound, and what did it mean to lose a mother as I was learning to become one? And that was deep.
That is deep, girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And it's so funny because I remember that coming up in our conversation, because whenever I think back to when I first meet a woman, like, I always make a very firm mental note. Who is she when she starts this? Like, that was really interesting to me because you were so curious. Like, I mean, I could tell that, like, there was hurt there, but you were so curious and so clear about what you wanted to come out with that I was like, oh yeah, she's going to kick ass here. I'm not worried about her. And she's going to do great.
Mm-hmm.
But that also, like, you committing to giving to yourself at that level with that kind of consistency was another leap. What was that like? Because, like, as a therapist, you're used to giving to other people in a big way. But that very first step of saying yes to yourself and yes, that I'm going to commit to doing this program, that is a super high level of receiving. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, receiving is the perfect word, because especially when you're the child of an alcoholic and a therapist, yeah, I'm used to giving all the time and giving as much as I can. And really, I was her parent for pretty much our whole relationship. So she was gone, and I didn't really know who I was. Who was I without her? And I think why a coach, and particularly one with feminine energies such as yourself, and I say that, with love, of like being in space with other, female identifying people who are all about helping you come into this role of the feminine and motherhood and receiving all of that, was exactly the space that I needed to be in and that I needed to grieve in, which was really important. And what I loved about like our first interview was you said, you were like, you can do this. You're actually very young. And every doctor had told me I'm old, you know? And so you just giving that kind of feedback and that kind of positivity, that was something I didn't get from my mom. You know, I didn't get a lot of positivity from her. And so it was healing in this way that I didn't kind of realize it would even be, of like, you know, it was trusting you to lead me on the path. And then I think you do a really great job of then teaching us to trust ourselves, to lead ourselves. But I needed kind of a leader to come in and take my hand and guide me for a little bit. And sometimes I think that is what women can be missing on this journey, because it can feel so lonely. It can feel like you're not doing it with anybody and you have nobody that's here to help you and to guide you and then to teach you those skills so that you can do it on your own.
Yeah. And I think it's also hard for a very specific kind of woman, because those of us that are lovably, got our lists, we're always doing, achieving, making shit happen. It is hard to receive from other women that, I think it takes an alpha female to hold space to an alpha female. Now, alpha shows up in many different ways. But I remember even in our first conversation, I'm like, this woman is strong. She's got some, this has to be a unique space. So I appreciate what you're saying. And I also appreciate what it meant, because I think that's a very rare thing as well, where when you're taking care of so many other people, like what it takes for you to drop the armor so that you can be poured into is like next level.
It was really, really next level. And I think your program is really great because there are modules. There's a rhythm to it that works. You're not dropping us in the deep end module one.
No.
But each one is going to pull back a layer, is going to ask you to really look at parts of yourself and the stories that you're telling yourself that might be holding you back from receiving, this love, this support, and then eventually this baby. And that it's confronting. This work is no joke.
Well, so that's a good segue into like, what were some of the things that you saw changing within you? Because I remember distinctly, you were always there, girl. You were always there paying fucking attention. You paw up, ready to go. Like, what did you notice changing within you?
Well, at first I noticed that like I really had to confront my fear, just this fear that my body is broken, that I'm just death, that death follows me, all this fear and these diagnoses that I feel like had been put onto me. We did a great exercise one session that was like the diagnosis of perimenopausal was this sweatshirt I was wearing. And you were like, take the sweatshirt off. And I like took the sweatshirt off. And that was me taking the diagnosis off and letting it go. And similarly, like all of this mom grief, I think it was like letting go the stories that I had told myself about her. One of the positive things that she had always told me was like, oh, I got pregnant really easily. You'll get pregnant really easily. And that was something that I held on to because it was something I appreciated about her. And then all of a sudden that wasn't true, quote unquote, because I wasn't getting pregnant easily. And then it was like, oh my God, the one thing I wanted to be similar to my mom about, I can't even do that, right? So all these beliefs that I really had to strip away and first look at and then strip away and do these exercises, that you teach us to kind of let them go and not allow them to be the story that I tell myself going forward was really important. And the second piece of that is something I love that you teach, and I love to spread it too, is like, don't stop your life while you're on this journey. And I had it in my head that I really wanted to get pregnant before we got married. We were engaged, but I was like, no, I think it'd be so fun to have a baby before we get married. I didn't really ever care about like having a wedding or marriage, or just not really my thing. But you and I had kind of talked about, like, I think you should have the wedding. Like, if you want to, like, you should have the wedding and start planning that, and don't stop your life. Because I was stopping my life for 2.5 years, just focusing on baby. And then once I stopped the program, then finished, graduated of your program, and then started planning the wedding. And it was all of a sudden, it was like things started moving in my life. And I can talk about what happened, but it was like then, yeah, everything had kind of shifted. My life hadn't stopped. It wasn't all about having the baby. And that was really important. It gave me a lot of joy back in my life.
Oh, you're making mama proud right now, Caroline, because like, oh my gosh, if we could just bottle that, if we could just bottle the idea that you don't have to choose, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can take a stand for the and, that you can live and be on this journey and have joy. Like, I don't know where we as women picked up. Well, I have some suspicions, but I don't know where we got this idea that we have to suffer in order to either be worthy of the thing that we want or to have, quote unquote, earned it. But we put ourselves through so much suffering.
Yeah. And believe that there's like merit in that, and that it's part of the process. And maybe if we suffer harder, then we will get what we want. I truly did believe that. Being an athlete, right? Like, you think I have to run the wind sprints in order to be good in the game, or whatever it is. We're trained to kind of believe that. And I think for you to help me let go of that mindset, that it doesn't have to be hard, that hard is what suffering, was huge, but took a while. It's hard to let that go, and to believe that you can conceive in joy. It's weird, but that was like strange to me. Like, I can be happy and conceive, and that'll just happen.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. And I love that we're talking about this, because there's a huge difference between something being hard, meaning suffering, and discipline and choice and putting your back into something, because it's completely different energy. One is like the energy of commitment and decision, and the other one is misery. And clearly you began to see the distinction there.
Totally. And so it wasn't even stopping trying. Like, I know that word, I go back and forth on that word, but I was doing the work at the same time. So I was taking all of the supplements that I knew were helping, that felt good. I was going to acupuncture. I was seeing, I'm really into spiritual healers, and I was getting my tarot read. I was doing things that felt good to me and felt positive. And I knew all of that. That still felt like joy, even though that was effort, right? And then there were other boundaries that I gave myself. Like my big boundary, and to each woman their own, but my gift to myself was no baby showers. I was like, you don't have to go to a baby shower for the rest of the year. And like, more power to women that can go. It was just too hard on me. I'll send the gift, but like, I can't go. I can't be there. And that was a beautiful gift to myself, because it didn't make me feel good, right? So it was the mix of like, do the things that make you feel good, plan the wedding, take the supplements, go to acupuncture, all the things. And then the things that don't make you feel good, don't do them, and give yourself that gift.
I mean, imagine having fucking boundaries, Caroline. I mean, like, think about that. Like, I mean, that's such a huge thing. Like, dude, you're just dropping bombs. I'm just so happy to be having this conversation. But like, the idea that we can have boundaries, it's so funny. Like, when you can see the light go off in people's heads when they figure that out. They're like, oh, what? I can send a gift but not have to go, and not have to go into a shame spiral for 20 years because I didn't show up, but, send a gift. I mean, like, Who are you? Caroline, have you had a head transplant? Like, who are you?
That's what it felt like. That I think this mindset work, that is what it gives you, right? Is that, that brain transplant of the beliefs that you then start telling yourself, that you then say like, I am fertile. My best days are ahead of me. You know, all of those kind of affirmations that may have seemed cheesy to me when I started the program and then left feeling like lifelines, you know, feeling like the things that were going to keep getting me through. One thing that was really important that you had kind of said was like, every month is a new month. And that was really important because it was like, you know, your period comes and you have a moment of sadness or whatnot. And then it was like, okay, but next month is the next, is a new journey. And I'll have been taking supplements for that much longer. I will be that much closer to my wedding. I mean, like you can kind of reclaim your life back, I think, with a lot of this stuff. And as we know, that mind-body connection, there's something there.
Oh, yeah, it's everything. I mean, I don't think we'll fully understand how powerful that is. I mean, I was doing research for my 4th book that's coming out, and I was looking at data. I'm like, there's actual studies on the role of mindset work and fertility, and why is not everybody talking about this, right? It's like, why is this not pasted everywhere? It's freely available on freaking PubMed, showing like the impact and improvement in women's outcomes when they do this work. Like it's crazy. But I want to go back to something that you said, because I think that a lot of women, when they hear about mindset work, they think we're all sitting in a circle, like levitating. But you know that kind of mindset work is not what I'm teaching. Like it is way more active than that. And I think you are a prime example of just how active it is, because affirmations can sound cheesy, but you didn't stop at an affirmation. You were taking action in furtherance of what you said you wanted. You were actually applying what you were learning. It wasn't just 8 weeks of feel good, Caroline, because you went and did something with it. That's huge.
Yeah. And to kind of continue my story, when we stopped working together, I started planning the wedding, which was huge. And then we got pregnant in March. You and I had stopped working together in January. We got pregnant in March. And I miscarried after five and a half weeks. And I remember having to do the mindset work again, maybe go back to some of your meditations or modules, but it was a little bit easier. It was kind of, I would say, I don't know, it was a little bit easier going through the second one, feeling like, okay, but my body's doing something. I just come off the program. Then I get pregnant again in June, and there's no heartbeat. And I have to get a D&C. And that was really painful and really set me back. I will say, like, all that negative I am death mindset shit just came roaring back. It did, because we're not perfect. And this stuff is a journey and it's going to come back. But I think what you're saying is like how it's not easy. It's not just sitting around singing Kumbaya. I think part of my journey was a little bit of like, okay, prove you know how to do the work. You've done it. We're going to test this a little bit. And so I would say, took me a couple weeks for sure. I grieved. I had those moments. But the other thing that I kept telling myself was, my body is doing what it knows how to do. I've now been pregnant 3 times, and I wouldn't wish 3 miscarriages on anybody. And I do grieve for the part of me that had to go through that. But I also kept saying, like, well, fuck that fertility doctor who told me this would never happen. Because look, it's happening. My body's working hard. And that spiritual piece of like, it felt like my baby was working hard to get to me. And maybe this month it wasn't right. Maybe these cells weren't right. Who knows? But it felt like everything was doing what it needed to do. Baby was trying to get to me. And I kind of just surrendered to that. and allowed that to be positive rather than the I am death. It was like, nope, I am life. It is trying, like we're going to get there.
I'm blown away because do you realize who you had to become in order to take 3 miscarriages with that kind of a mindset? Like that is huge. And I love the sense of humor that your highest Caroline has, because she's like, well, these fucking doctors don't know what they're talking about. And like, because you're right, your body was in the game. And do you know, I mean, you do know because you've lived it. I mean, think about what it takes for you to say, my body knows what she's doing. She's doing what she knows to do. Let me trust her. There was something not right. She's doing what she knows to do. Like, it's masterful to be able to say that, because most people would make it about them not being enough. But you grabbed that piece of information and made it work for you, and to say, my body knows what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened next?
Yeah. So then, well, and again, so we're still planning for the wedding, which really helped. I really mean that whole idea of like, don't stop the rest of your life, because then I got to keep looking forward to something. There was still joy in my life, even though I had gone through back-to-back miscarriages, painful miscarriages. But there was the wedding in September to look forward to. My husband and I, so in love, really in it together. You know, we're going to get all the people we love in the world together. So that really also helped. And it didn't stop my life, and it kept going. We get married in September. We go on a honeymoon in October, and we get pregnant in November. Yeah. Yeah. And you said this to me too in the program of like, the mindset work doesn't stop, right? So we get pregnant in September. And when I tell you, immediately I'm going, oh God, but that means I could miscarry around Christmas again. I mean, like immediately it was going to be loss, right? Because I'd never had a full-term pregnancy. It had only been loss. And so there was a lot of anxiety of like, oh my God, can I believe this is going to work? You know, we'd never gotten to 8 weeks, and then we get to 9 weeks. We'd never heard a heartbeat. We finally heard a heartbeat. And God, like whoever's listening, like it's worth it, because hearing that heartbeat for the first time after all that loss was just, you know, one of the greatest moments of my life and worth everything I had been through.
Okay. Like, okay, so let's back up the bus so that we fully appreciate what's happened here. So you had a miscarriage. You're in a dark place for a year and a half. You come to me, you do the program in January. That's January 2023.
Mm-hmm.
You have 3 more pregnancies after that. You get married. And in between all that, you were told this was never going to happen for you because you're in perimenopause. Your numbers are freaking shit.
Mm-hmm.
You get married. And what month did you get married?
Got married in September.
Married in September. Pregnant November.
Mm-hmm.
So you made all of these massive changes and were pregnant for good.
Mm-hmm.
In less than a year.
Yep. And yep. Just.
And how many weeks are you now?
24. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's unfreaking believable. Like, and just everything that you said about hearing the heartbeat, all of this stuff. I mean, like, what is it like to be here now, 24 weeks into this pregnancy? You're more than halfway. You're getting ready, like the finish line. Like, what's it like to be in this place after being the woman who called herself, I am, death follows me. I am death. Nothing works for me. My life sucks. I can't keep a pregnancy. Like, what's it like to be on this side?
I mean, I want to like hug that version of me that was really going through it, because she's still close. Like, I know how hard that was. And I remember going on walks and listening to your podcast and holding on to these women's stories of success, and that girl was grieving. She was grieving her mom. She was grieving the miscarriages. She was grieving that this was hard in the first place. Because you don't ever tell yourself that hopefully that it's going to be hard. You hope you're going to get pregnant exactly when you want to. And so there was so much grief. And I know this is going to annoy some people, and that's okay.
That's okay. You get to be as annoying as you want, pregnant lady.
But it made me who I am today. All that loss and doing all that work is going to make me a better mother. It really is. And I didn't want to hear that when I was going through it. But every kick that I feel is this affirmation that I was right back then, that little voice was right, that I did all the supplements were worth it, all the appointments, all the work, that it was worth it, that I needed to go through it. And it just made me stronger and more me and this version. And I love this version. And in that way, it was worth it.
This is an evolution. I mean, you and I are in the same camp. People find what I say annoying as well. So high five, sister. We're in the same place. Because like I always say, this journey is a gift. Mm-hmm. It is a gift. And I'm not pretending that it's an easy one. Mm-hmm. But it's the gifts that require our work, our attention, our commitment, our discipline, our love, our spirituality. Every part of us are the ones that mean the most. And I agree with you. This journey is an invitation to step into being the mother that you want to be. Because let's be honest, if this happened for you and you never had to do the work that you did to become the woman that could see past 3 losses, to be the woman who could see past a diagnosis that would probably send most people running, mm-hmm. to become that woman, like think about how you're going to mother. Mm-hmm. Think about how you're not a victim, because that's another thing. Like anyone that would find what we say annoying is in victimhood, is clinging so desperately to their victimhood that they don't want to see the light. And I'm not sorry, because if more women understood this, they would be sitting in a position of victory on their journey. And every journey is unique, right? And it should be, of course it's unique, right? But it's not personal in the sense that it's happening to you. It's always happening for you.
Yeah. And I think with your program or kind of whatever, like, again, the emotional excavation that we have to go through, seeing that as a gift to yourself, I think is so important. That doing the work, doing the mom work that I had to do, doing the grief work that I had to do, doing the mindset work of, changing my story. That was all a gift that I gave myself. And so seeing it that way, I think helps rather than like, oh, it's just one more thing. And it was like, no, this is amazing. And this is something I can give myself that's going to help me no matter what my journey looks like. Because that work has to be done for me to get to a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to look at it as instead of being another thing to do, it's the thing. Mm-hmm. It's the singular thing. Mm-hmm. Because everything, your brain is portable. It's going everywhere with you. And if you don't get your shit together, you're going to make decisions from fear. You're going to tell yourself, well, my body can't do this. Or you're going to make choices that you later regret. Mm-hmm. And think about who you get to be today, trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's the best part, is that you're then left with this version of yourself that you like better.
Oh, so much better. Wow. Wow. Well, so what do you think? I mean, how did this impact your relationship? Because, obviously we talked about how you have this great, wonderful man. Like, what was it like to be living this journey from a different mindset? Like, how was that like in your relationship?
Well, he could definitely tell, which was nice to have a witness, right? Like doing all this work. I remember him commenting that I seemed really different after the program, and whether that was just confidence or how I was speaking. It was also because I finished the program and was like, okay, I'm ready to get married. He's like, oh, okay. But like adding that joy back to our life and our relationship, and like, I think anybody trying knows, like, sex becomes perfunctory. It's the thing you have to do, it becomes this kind of job. And I think, again, like trying to lean more into the joy and it not being hard and it not being a job. And we would say, like, I had to kind of teach him what I was learning in the sense of like, okay, we are going to act from now on like this is happening. Our baby is coming. I need you on the same page. I need you to be that mindset warrior that is saying all the positive things that I need to hear. And so much to his credit, he trusted that voice in me. When I said, this is going to happen, I know my body can do this. Even after the other 2 miscarriages, like, I said to him, I just really feel like my body is working and that it is working. And he'd be like, you're right. It is. Like, look at us doing this. We got really close this time. All those things felt so positive. And along with the wedding, and not everybody's wedding is going to align perfectly, obviously, with their story, but we were so in love, right? We're in the honeymoon stage of having just gotten married. We actually went on a honeymoon. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence we got pregnant right after, because we're just having fun and loving on each other and loving even being a twosome for that time. So,
oh my gosh, Caroline, my heart is going to burst. I mean, I just love all this because, not only did you get pregnant naturally when they told you this wasn't going to happen, you were such a beacon for like, yes, and in your marriage and your relationships, and that you don't have to live under the tyranny of a diagnosis, that you are the authority. Because whether women realize this or not, I want to pull this out because we can't hear it enough. You are either the authority in your life or you're going to hand that authority to somebody else. Claim that authority. Because can you imagine, like, if you hadn't had that pivotal moment in your life where you chose even to listen slightly to that small voice, like, just think about where you might be having given up on yourself. But because you didn't give up on yourself, because you claim that authority, even as tenuously as you might have in the very beginning, you're here. You and I are having this conversation and you're getting ready to have a baby. Like, dude, 14 weeks? If I'm doing my math right, like, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. Like, sincerely, my prayer for you is that you never forget how powerful you are, because you pulled this like out of nowhere. Like, by comparison, right? Like, you pulled this out. And it's really, I mean, that's almost like kind of a little bit of a misnomer, because it wasn't from nowhere. It was really from your heart. Like, you were able to pull this out from a place where I think more women need to live on this journey, and that's by heart.
Yeah. Yeah. To listen to that voice, it does matter. It really does. That voice is telling you that you can do this for a reason, that this will happen to you for a reason. And that was everything. Yeah.
Well, so, okay. So if you were going to leave the women listening to this they're going to be riveted by this conversation, unquestionably, for about a zillion and 5 different reasons, what would be like the most important piece of information you would want them to walk away with from your unique story?
Oh, you are not death. Just, I mean, I was there. I really was there. You know, it took 2.5 years from start of this journey to finish, and all the loss and all the grief, you know, that I had to go through, that doing the mindset work and taking care of yourself in that way, mothering yourself in the way that I needed to remother myself is worth it no matter the outcome, is a gift you can give yourself. And it will only, I believe, make you a better pregnant person and mother in the future if you can really take care of your emotional needs right now with this mindset work. And I know women have said it, but to listen to that voice carried me through, that my body can do this, that even in loss, it means my body can do this, and that I'm meant to be a mother and I will be a mother, and how it happens, I can't control, but I just need that belief, and that will carry you through.
That is so beautiful, Caroline, and so kind, so generous, so thoughtful. And it's just a delight, as I said earlier in this conversation, to be having this conversation with you and being able to share in this moment with you, because it's just incredible to watch who you've become. And the good news is this: you're going to give this to your son or daughter. You're going to show them what it means to be able to think critically and to think beyond what's immediately in front of you, to see with their heart. And this is something, I mean, you're literally changing your family tree, not just with the addition of a baby, but the way y'all think. It's going to be incredible, because you can go anywhere you want from here, Caroline, because you just did the hardest thing ever. You called in a baby. Everything else in this life is a piece of cake by comparison. So I cannot wait to see what you do next. Like, go out and crush it, lady. Like, I'm just so thankful that you are here. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you do, you know, the podcast and the coaching and the messaging that you give. It helped me so much. And shout out to my cohort. Because like the last thing I said, you know, and my last call was like, I'm going to be on the podcast. I just know it. And to see all those women, I can still picture their faces just supporting me. Like, I've never forgotten you guys. And I can't wait to listen to your podcast episodes too.
Yep. Oh my goodness, woman. Thank you for that. And so many blessings to your gorgeous family. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.